this long trail, just be like, oh look, there's a little. I remember like, I thought that was I was on the side. Yeah.
And we love her. She's so fantastic.
Oh, that is a big fun.
Disneyland?
It was like they're doing pricing.
Demand pricing. You see though, I'm not sure how they're going to make it work. Oh, good. They're going to be in the same city.
I saw this live in the Armory.
I don't know.
Are you running? You start the new year with any running?
I did not run in California.
I think you had other family.
Yeah.
Columbia is after a bunch of Stanford, a bunch of places.
Swam.
If he gets in, he
Really, what are they swimming now I'm back here?
Oh, really?
By the way, thank you for giving us money.
Like, don't mind me.
So excited.
So, there you go.
He's the nicest guy.
Such a good reporter.
He's what this way. Okay.
Because then I don't have to like pass over my
You're so great also.
He's not in DC yet.
Not yet, but he
will
will
be.
be.
He will be. He's apparently going to get some school issues.
Yeah.
I told him that I could help him on the other end.
That worked out. How was it?
A lot of people are so
This like market is
like a sequence, yeah.
We can all swim.
That's great.
Plus your
And she was writing her column, which was
I have a like call my
she was like, yeah, I'm not ready to go there. I'm sorry, just stick it. Sorry, yeah. Definitely, yeah. Can you imagine? Okay. Oh, well, talk to Jeff Mason, who told me last night that he has an app that was about to raise positivity. He's going to do that. Raise positivity.
Any pointers would be helpful.
Like, yeah,
I'm gonna have a chat with him. Everybody's like, oh, really?
Hold on, because it might like not actually. What do you
That's so old. No more primaries to cover anymore because they do. Elections in Russia. Don't really come around that often. When they do, it's polling is much more accurate.
Right.
I'm sorry,
No, you're good. I was just debating whether to go find downstairs.
Hello.
You got a nice jacket. And that's first off, have I got soft?
I mean, I was born soft.
You were born soft, but I was hard, and I feel like I got my cold.
And there's cold air outdoors, and it keeps coming indoors.
Yeah. Is that your scientific evaluation?
No, we're fine using that one. Yeah, you just have to show your badge. So anybody that has a badge. Oh, yeah. Yeah, but we got that fixed. That was one of my accomplishments.
One of your many. One of your many.
Well, I guess they didn't want
Attention, the press briefing will begin in 2 minutes. The press briefing will begin in 2 minutes. Thank you.
That's right.
But the other day,
Well, I have.
oh, yeah, but that's right. If they send it out, let me know. See, I told her this is positivity. That's it. No, it's gonna be fine. Wilmington has good bars and restaurants. So I was gonna say singular.
I was gonna say, which one were you going to count? Which one? The coin made a difference. Hey. Yeah. I've been there. I went to Korea once and it was too much of a vibe. It was like, I want to sit here with the same. Exactly. Very, very yeah. And you know what? So I need like, I don't know, a vacation from it. I like staying out there. Sit at the bar. Yeah, you're right. That's pretty funny.
If you want.
I thought about, but you know what? I'll take a jail story.
All of these activities are mine are restricted to the Lower East Side from Manhattan. Yeah, usually I talk about sorry,
Martha, rocking the shoes. Christmas present.
Hey everybody, good afternoon. Hi Weisha. The president is tracking the tragic school shooting at Perry Middle and High School in Iowa. Our hearts break for the families of the victims in yet another act of senseless gun violence. We are grateful for the brave first responders who are on the scene And unfortunately, there is no longer an active threat to the school. I should say fortunate, not unfortunately. Senior White House staff have been in touch with the governor's office, and federal officials are working with local law enforcement to support their investigation. We will know more as they complete their work. It's only the fourth day in the new year, and we are already faced with yet another horrific school shooting. And the question that we ask is, when will enough be enough? The questions that families ask and the victims of families ask is, when will it be enough? When will enough be enough? Our students and teachers deserve to know that their schools are safe spaces and to focus on learning, not duck and cover drills. While the President and this administration have taken historic action to reduce gun violence, more must be done to keep our schools and communities safe. Congress must act to enact universal background checks, ban assault weapons and high-capacity magazines, require safe storage of firearms, end the gun industry's immunity from liability, and pass a national red flag law. We cannot allow these tragedies to continue. We have to do something. With that, as you can see, the Admiral is back with us in the room to discuss some new information we have today on Russia's pursuit of ballistic missiles to enable its brutal war in Ukraine and answer some questions on that topic. All right, Admiral.
Good afternoon, everybody. Over the course of 5 days around the New Year's holiday, Russia launched repeated waves of aerial attacks against Ukraine. These massive bombardments used drones and missiles to strike cities and civilian infrastructure all across the country. Strikes reportedly hit a maternity hospital, a shopping mall, residential areas, killing dozens of innocent people and injuring hundreds more. As Russia continues to launch these brutal attacks, the United States has new information to share about the support that Russia is receiving from third countries. Due in part to our sanctions and export controls, Russia has become increasingly isolated on the world stage, and they've been forced to look to like-minded states for military equipment. As we've been warning publicly, one of those states is North Korea. Our information indicates that the Democratic People's Republic of Korea recently provided Russia with ballistic missile launchers and several ballistic missiles. On the 30th of December, 2023, Russian forces launched at least one of these North Korean ballistic missiles into Ukraine. This missile appears to have landed in an open field in the Zaporizhia region. And on January 2nd, Russia launched multiple North Korean ballistic missiles into Ukraine, including as part of its overnight aerial attack. We're still assessing the impacts of these additional missiles. We're releasing a graphic here, which you can see behind me, that documents the launch of these missiles from Russia into Ukraine. And as you can see, the graphic shows the area from which Russia launched the North Korean supplied ballistic missiles on those 2 dates, as well as the impact location inside Ukraine of the missile that was launched on the 30th of December. And as I said, we're still assessing the impacts of the other additional missiles that were launched on the 2nd. We expect Russia and North Korea to learn from these launches, and we anticipate that Russia will use additional North Korean missiles to target Ukraine's civilian infrastructure and to kill innocent Ukrainian civilians. These North Korean ballistic missiles are capable of ranges of approximately 900 kilometers. That's about 550 miles. This is a significant and concerning escalation in the DPRK's support for Russia. Now, in return for its support, we assess that Pyongyang is seeking military assistance from Russia, including fighter aircraft, surface-to-air missiles, armored vehicles, ballistic missile production equipment or materials, and other advanced technologies. This would have concerning security implications for the Korean Peninsula and the Indo-Pacific region. We've also said publicly that Russia is seeking to acquire close-range ballistic missiles from Iran. At this time, we do not believe that Iran has delivered close-range ballistic missiles to Russia. However, the United States is concerned that Russian negotiations to acquire close-range ballistic missiles from Iran are actively advancing. According to press reporting, in September of 2023, Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC, hosted Russian Defense Minister Shoigu in Iran and showcased its Ababil close-range ballistic missile and other missile systems. This event marked the first public display of ballistic missiles to a senior Russian official visiting Iran since February 2022. More recently, in mid-December, the the IRGC Aerospace Force deployed multiple ballistic missile and missile support systems to a training area inside Iran for display to a visiting Russian delegation. We assess that Russia intends to purchase missile systems from Iran. So in response to Russia's activities with Iran and North Korea, we are taking a range of steps with our allies and our partners. First, Russia's procurement of ballistic missiles from the DPRK directly violates multiple UN Security Council resolutions. We will raise these arms deals at the UN Security Council alongside our allies and partners, and we will demand that Russia be held accountable for, yet again, violating its international obligations. Second, we will impose additional sanctions against those working to facilitate arms transfers between Russia and the DPRK and between Russia and Iran. Third, we will continue to release information to the public and expose these arms deals, as we are doing today, because we will not allow countries to aid Russia's war machine in secret. But here's the bottom line. The most effective response to Russia's horrific violence against the Ukrainian people is to continue to provide Ukraine with vital air defense capabilities and other types of military equipment. To do that, we need Congress to approve our supplemental funding request for Ukraine without delay. Russia is relying upon its friends to replenish its military stockpiles and enable its war against Ukraine. Iran and the DPRK are standing with Russia. Ukrainians deserve to know that the American people and this government will continue to stand with them. So it's critical that Congress meets this moment and responds by providing Ukraine with what they need to defend themselves. The time for Congress to act is now. Thank you.
Thank you. John, can you talk a little bit about how you obtained the information? Where did it come from? And then also, do you have any idea whether there are more that Russia has more from the DPRK coming as well, or have they sort of exhausted DPRK and now they're moving on to Iran?
So on your first question, I have to be, I think you understand, I have to be very careful here. We have been able to downgrade this information to provide to you today. As you know, intelligence is a mosaic, and we get information from many different sources that are corroborated and knit together to create the fabric that you saw today. So I'm not going to really be able to go into great detail about all the pieces that helped us put this together, but it was a wide range of intelligence sources over a period of time. As for their inventory now, again, I want to be careful here, but I would just put it this way, that we haven't seen anything that would tell us that Russia is not still reliant on munitions and missiles from North Korea. And as you remember, we also downgraded some information months ago about their procurement of artillery shells. So this is a relationship that has been ongoing, and we're obviously deeply concerned that it appears to still be in force, and that's why we're going to take those actions here at the UN.
And in regards to Iran, how close is Russia to obtaining or to purchasing missiles from Iran?
All I can tell you is what I said at the top, which is we have not seen them consummate a deal for close-range ballistic missiles.
Go ahead, Michael.
Admiral, I think you said in your topper that you sort of attributed part of the reason that Russia is having to go to these sources to the success of American sanctions aimed at their domestic production. But in our reporting suggests that there is intelligence that the domestic production of missiles inside of Russia has largely recovered, and in fact now the daily production of missiles inside Russia by Russia's own manufacturing system has now exceeds what it was pre-war. So how much does the US government believe they really need these North Korean and Iranian systems, or is it just that is the sort of more scary part, that they're getting some different systems than they have the capability to build? Or what difference does it make that they're getting them from North Korea if they have the production capabilities to do it themselves?
Well, there's awful lot there, Mike. So first of all, it's not just U.S. sanctions and export controls. It's really an international effort to put pressure on his war-making ability, and we do believe it has been effective. I mean, he's now able to produce Iranian-designed drones on Russian soil because of this deal he's got with Iran. And as we've talked about, he's going to countries like North Korea for additional munitions, missiles, and artillery shells. I can't speak to the degree to which his defense industry has somehow managed to overcome the pressure. I would argue that we don't believe that it has fully circumvented and been able to thrive under the international economic pressure that he's under. We still believe that the export controls and the sanctions that we and our partners have put in place have had a detrimental effect on his ability, his defense industrial capacity. That does not mean that he hasn't tried to improve and increase that capacity. He has. We've talked about this many times. I mean, his war-making machine is still capable. And to the last part of your question, it's not. We're not seeing anything that would tell us that these particular capabilities add something he doesn't already have. He already had a pretty sophisticated missile capability before he decided to invade Ukraine, but it certainly is additive to his capability. And as he tries to, again, without getting into a debate about how much he has or hasn't improved his defense industrial base, as he certainly tries to recover from the pressure he's under, these are additive elements to his ability to continue to hit civilian infrastructure. It is, though, of a piece of a larger effort by Mr. Putin to weaponize the winter, to target specific civilian infrastructure and facilities to try to break the back of the Ukrainian people.
John, I want to go back to something you said yesterday. You said Hamas still has a significant force posture inside Gaza. And I'm wondering how you square that with the civilian casualties. I mean, if an estimated 22,000 people have died, and you're saying that Hamas still has a significant presence in Gaza, aren't you essentially saying that this campaign is not effective?
No, that's not what I'm saying at all. First of all, we're not chipping in from the sidelines here and giving them a report card on all their operations. You can still be effective against the leadership of an organization and still have many members of the organization survive. They have gone after the leadership at various levels, and they will continue to do that. But I don't see the dissonance there.
So you deny that the civilian casualties are disproportionate to achieving their objective of eliminating Hamas?
We've been very clear about civilian casualties, Mary. Zero is the right answer. We want to see them do more to reduce the impact on the civilian population and to protect innocent lives. I mean, we don't want to see a single more civilian killed here.
I guess when the civilian casualty outweighs the losses to Hamas this significantly, this drastically, if that many people have died and you still have a significant presence inside of Gaza, at what point do you say this strategy isn't working?
That would be for the Israelis to speak to. This is their operation, not the United States operation. They would have to make those kinds of decisions. I will tell you that they believe that they still have a viable threat by Hamas, that the Israeli people are still under a threat by Hamas, an organization that has vowed to do October 7th over and over and over again, that doesn't believe that Israel should exist as a nation. And so they're prosecuting against that threat. And we are continuing to talk to them about how they do that, because as Secretary Blinken has said, how they do it matters. And we want to make sure that they're doing it effectively, clearly, against the leadership of Hamas, going after their ability to command, control, and resource themselves, at the same time protecting innocent lives.
Thanks, Karine. John, ISIS has claimed responsibility for the attack in Iran. Is that the U.S. conclusion as well? And what is your analysis, or the U.S. analysis then, of ISIS's strength and whether it's increasing?
We have seen the public credit now that ISIS-K has taken for the attack in Iran. We're certainly in no position to doubt that claim by ISIS-K. And I'm sorry, the second question was?
What your analysis is of Islamic State's strength, given the fact that they were able to carry out that attack.
Difficult to make a quantitative or qualitative assessment of their strength based on this event, this one event. I would just say what we said before, which is ISIS-K does remain a viable terrorist threat. Certainly they are largely based out of Afghanistan. That's where they headquarter themselves, and they continue to pose a viable terrorist threat to the people of Afghanistan and obviously to the region.
Is this, I guess, a sign that that threat is increasing? Is that level of threat going up?
Jeff, I don't think we can make that call right now based on this one attack. It's it would be imprudent to say, well, based on this one thing, that means that they have exponentially improve their capabilities or their resourcing to a certain degree. I just don't think we're at that point. We've long said and maintained that they remain a viable terrorist threat.
Thank you, Karine. Thanks, John. Yesterday, you also said once again that you expect Israel to operate within the boundaries of humanitarian law. But the last time I asked you whether the U.S. had assessed whether it was doing that or not, you said you did not know of any assessments. Has that changed? And if it hasn't, is it just an honor system that the U.S. will take Israel at its word that it is not breaking any war crimes?
I think you're conflating a couple of things. The question I got yesterday was about speculation that the Israelis conducted an airstrike in Lebanon to kill a senior Hamas leader, accounts that I'm still not able to confirm. And what I said was they have a right and a responsibility to go after Hamas leadership. They've said that they're going to do that, same kind of tactic that we would and have approached against groups like ISIS and Al-Qaeda, but we expect them to do it in accordance with international law, is what I said, and that was the context with which I said it. It wasn't about civilian casualties. It was about a proposed airstrike, a reported airstrike in southern Lebanon. Now, to the thrust of your question, we continue to talk to our Israeli counterparts about, again, the manner in which they're conducting military operations, and with the foremost in mind, the need to protect innocent civilian life. And as I have said before, we have seen them act in ways that demonstrate that they are making an effort. That doesn't mean that more can't be done or more shouldn't be done. We don't want to see a single more innocent civilian life taken. But they have, for instance, they have reduced their reliance on airstrikes. They have, in some cases, conducted operations at smaller unit levels so that they can be a little bit more precise. They have publicized areas where people can go to be safe from combat operations, and they have opened up humanitarian corridors. So they are making an effort. Again, doesn't mean that more can't be done.
So I hear what you're saying, and if you continue to say you do a lot of talking to Israel, you do a lot of talking to partners in the region. Have you taken any action to this day to assess whether Israel is following the rules of war or not?
I am not aware of any kind of formal assessment being done by the United States government to analyze the compliance with international law by our partner Israel.
Why not? And how can you be sure then that the weapons and resources that the U.S. is supplying is under those guidelines?
I would just tell you that we have not seen anything that would convince us that we need to take a different approach in terms of trying to help Israel defend itself.
Thanks, John, Admiral. There was a strike in Baghdad today that killed a military commander of a pro-Iranian group. Just wondering if you can confirm whether the United States was responsible for that strike.
I think I'm going to refer you to the Department of Defense on that one. But didn't you ask me yesterday about Palestinian taxes?
I did not.
Somebody did.
I'll take an answer.
Yeah, but I actually, if you don't mind, I screwed this up. I screwed this up yesterday. So I was asked yesterday about whether we think Israel should agree to the Norwegian plan that would allow taxes that Israel collects for the Palestinians to be transferred to the PA. This is Palestinian money. We've been clear that those revenues should be released to the Palestinian people. I got it wrong yesterday, and I just wanted to correct the record.
Thank you, Karine. Just quickly, John, on the strike in Ukraine, is the fact that the North Korean missile landed in an open field indicative of a failure of the missile of some kind?
Yeah, I think it's just too soon to know that. We don't have any specific data analysis that tells us it was a failure of the missile. Could have been a targeting issue. Could be a missile malfunction. It might be a result of poor operational factors, whether or not the crew was properly trained how to fire. We just don't know. I mean, thankfully, all it did was put a hole in a field. But I would remind that on the 2nd of January, there were multiple North Korean ballistic missiles fired into Ukraine. And as I said in my opening statement, we're still doing the assessment on the damage that they caused.
On the attack, or on the warning to the Houthis from that list of nations, can that be read as anything other than threatening to attack in Yemen?
It's a pretty clear statement of how concerned we and our 12 other partners are, particularly, about what the Houthis are doing in the Red Sea. We don't telegraph our punches one way or another, but we take these attacks very, very seriously. The impact that they're having on international commerce and free shipping, and we're going to keep doing what we need to do to protect our interests.
Is there anything you can tell us on what the menu is of the list of consequences that could be possible?
I'm just not going to get ahead of where we are right now. Again, I think that was a pretty clear statement about our interests and about how seriously we're taking this threat. And as the statement said, the Houthis will be held accountable for the consequences.
Thank you, Karine. John, Iran made 2 transactions withdrawing from the previously frozen funds in Oman. What were those transactions for?
I don't have the details on that, Jackie. You're going to have to let me get back to you on that.
Okay. I let the office know before that I was looking for this question, so I hope to get one today.
Sorry.
Okay, I'll come back to you with that.
Sure,
then.
of course.
More broadly, I guess, is the administration at all reconsidering its decisions to finance Iran indirectly by allowing these sanctions waivers to go forward, given the level of proxy attacks that we've seen?
The finance, or you mean by...
Well, it's from humanitarian aid,
exactly,
right?
Yeah.
But we had these 2 transactions I'm talking about, and I'm hoping we can get an answer on what they were for, but the Assistant Treasury Secretary for Terrorist Financing and Financial Crimes was testifying about this to a House subcommittee and said that any details, about those transactions would have to be provided in a classified setting. Why would we need to have that information be behind closed doors when that money is supposed to only be for humanitarian purposes? It should be, transparent, I would think. And I know the administration also sort of quietly reversed its decision to allow, withdrawals from the $6 billion that was freed up for the prisoner swap. But after that decision, the $10 billion, the waiver was extended for the $10 billion. This was the money that was payments for electricity in Iraq. So anyway, given the level of proxy attacks and the availability of these funds, is the U.S. reconsidering these sanctions waivers?
With the caveat that I'm going to have to get back to you on whether or not there's actually been some sort of procurement request by the Iranians for the humanitarian assistance. I just don't know the answer to that. So with that as a caveat, I would tell you that, again, none of that money goes to the Iranian regime, and none of it goes to the mullahs. It is if it has been allocated against, it would go to approved vendors that would purchase food, water, medicine, agricultural products, and then ship that directly into Iran for the benefit of the Iranian people. And this really, what your question kind of goes...
Given the behavior of the state right now, we've talked briefing with this news about...
Our issue is not with the Iranian people, and it's difficult to square anybody having a problem with the Iranian people getting food, water, medicine, and agricultural products so that they can subsist. It's not as if, and this is where I was getting to on the fungibility argument, which is kind of what your question is getting to. It's not as if the mullahs are sitting around thinking, well, how can we make the lives of the Iranian people better? Let's get them more food, water, medicine. They're not making that choice. What they're doing is investing in missile technology and helping Ukraine kill innocent helping Russia kill innocent Ukrainians. So it's not, the fungibility argument just doesn't stand up. It's not like it frees up money that they were going to use on food and water that now they're going to go buy missiles with. They've been focusing.
That's exactly what it does.
Well, and I would argue that the critics are incorrect. It's the mullahs, the regime in Iran has been doing that consistently over multiple presidential administrations, Republican and Democratic. They have hegemonic ambitions in the region, and they are a destabilizer in the region, and they have been investing a lot of money into advanced military capabilities to try to push forward that vision. It's not as if they've been prioritizing the Iranian people, and this money, these funds are designed for the Iranian people and for their benefit only.
One very last question. Can the administration name a single lawmaker who has called to reduce the number of Border Patrol agents?
a single lawmaker that has called for well, I would argue, as I think Karine has talked about this. I mean, in the fact that they voted down proposed legislation that would, at the president's urging, increase the number. So just by dint of the sheer numbers and the votes, the House Republicans have said they don't favor increasing the number of border agents. And you heard Speaker Johnson down at the border yesterday. That they're not interested in moving forward on the president's national security supplemental, which had $6 billion in there, much of it designed to get us another 1,300 border agents.
About the 2,000 Border Patrol agents being eliminated, I think that's a reference to the House DHS appropriations bill, which was obviously not taken up by the Senate. They had a CR, but that very bill, I mean, Republicans say that it actually would have increased the number of Border Patrol agents because it was going to eliminate funds for climate change and clean energy programs. I mean, the White House even issued a statement at that time saying that those cuts to those programs would be, unpalatable to the president. But this is sort of the first time I've been hearing this claim about eliminating 2,000 Border Patrol agents and painting a picture like we're short 2,000 at the border when, in fact, that didn't happen.
When the proposed legislation has additional border agents in it and House Republicans voted down, I'm not sure how else you want to take that.
All right. Go ahead. Give me 1 second.
On Ukraine, what options has the White House or the administration reviewed to get aid to Ukraine if Congress can't deliver on the supplemental request? And as these talks are ongoing, what conversations is the U.S. having with its allies who are also supporting Ukraine? Is it creating any concern on their part if Congress can't deliver on the $60 billion?
Without question, our allies and partners are watching what we do here. U.S. leadership matters. It matters a lot when it comes to being able to support Ukraine. Now, they'll have to make their own decisions. They're sovereign nations, too. As they have over the last 2 years, they will going forward. We obviously want to be able to continue to support Ukraine for ourselves. We certainly want to see our allies and partners be able to do that as well. But only they could speak to the degree to which they're going to be willing going forward based on what we do. But the whole world's watching what we do. You know who else is watching is Vladimir Putin and President Xi in Beijing. They're watching too, whether or not the United States really will prove to be a reliable partner. Now, as your first question, as I said yesterday, we delivered or announced the distribution of the final security assistance package for which we had replenishment money left to provide on the 27th of December. There isn't any more money to do that. Now, I'm not going to get ahead of where we are and speak about hypotheticals or branches that we might try to pursue going forward, but we need this money. The answer to this problem, as I said in my opening statement, is Congress acting on the supplemental request so that we can continue to help Ukraine defend itself.
Thank you so much. A quick question on the conflict in the Middle East. Does the administration believe that the blast in Tehran is linked to efforts to widen the Gaza war to the broader Middle East? And I asked the same question about the U.S. strike in Baghdad that we reported today.
On the U.S. strike, I'm going to refer you to the Department of Defense. I'm not in a position to speak to that specifically. I haven't seen anything that that indicates there's a direct link to what's going on in Gaza and with the attack in Iran on the anniversary of Soleimani's death. I haven't seen anything tangible that would tell me that there's a link there.
And then while Ukraine waits for replenishment of its air defense systems, are you worried that Russia could destroy some of its batteries, like the Patriots and the NASAMS and whatever they're called? And how is that a priority to replenish them once you get the funding?
We would absolutely prioritize air defense capabilities with additional funding that we expect to get for Ukraine, or we hope to get for Ukraine. Yes, air defense would be top of the list.
Thank you. On Iraq, John, how do you balance going after militias who threaten the U.S. presence within the coalitions in Iraq with a diplomatic standoff with the government that considered a partner, since they accuse the U.S. of violating sovereignty after going after the Nujaba movement today in this strike?
Again, I can't speak to the specifics of this particular strike. I would just tell you that, first of all, we're grateful for the continued support that we get from the government of Iraq. We are an advise and assist capacity only to help Iraqi security forces continue to go after a still viable ISIS threat in Iraq. and that partnership continues. Unlike unlike Iran and the IRGC, we actually respect Iraqi sovereignty, and we take that seriously. You know what else we take seriously? Defending the lives of our men and women in uniform who are in Iraq, at Iraq's invitation, to help them get better against this terrorist threat. We take that seriously too. We have a right and a responsibility to make sure that they are well defended. And as the President has said, we'll continue to do what we have to do to protect our people.
More, you said that Israel conducts this war and you want to see 0 civilian casualty. Many believe that without the US, Israel cannot conduct this war because you support them militarily, you shield them at the UN Security Council. So you have huge leverage over the Israelis how they should conduct this war, especially that we've seen cabinet ministers attending a war cabinet in Israel, which we haven't seen before with other allies. So would you say that you actually can help to push more to reduce the number of civilian casualties, to increase humanitarian aid to Gaza, considering that aid organizations are saying that by February, Gazans are facing famine in the 21st century?
First, let me say we're very mindful of the humanitarian crisis that exists in Gaza, whether it's food, obviously medicine, water. And that is why, to your specific question, we have worked hard since the beginning of this conflict to talk to the Israelis about how they're conducting these operations, to lead the world literally in increasing humanitarian assistance inside Gaza now. Now, there's 2 gates open, Rafah and Kerem Shalom. That's not by accident. That's because the our American diplomatic efforts had done so much to get those gates open, and the trucks continue to flow. Not as much as we want, but they are. We're leading the world in terms of trying to make sure that we can alleviate that humanitarian suffering in Gaza. And that takes a lot of tough conversations sometimes with our Israeli counterparts, but we're not shying away from that. Secretary Blinken is literally on his way back to Israel today as we speak to have these continued conversations with our Israeli counterparts.
Thank you, Karine. Thank you, John. About Chinese spy balloons, Taiwan Defense Ministry stated yesterday that they spotted several Chinese balloons over the island. Does the White House have any reaction? Also, are you concerned about election interference as the election is approaching?
Yeah, I'm not in a position to confirm reports about balloons over Taiwan. I'd certainly refer you to officials in Taiwan and to Beijing to speak to that. We obviously support the democracy and the democratic institutions of Taiwan, and we want to see free, fair, open, transparent elections there. And we're certainly mindful that outside actors could try to interfere, and we continue to urge anyone outside Taiwan not to interfere in their ability to have a free, fair, democratic election.
Jake.
Thank you, Karine. Happy New Year, Karine. Happy New Year, Admiral. On a somber note, Kirby, the youngest hostage being held captive in Gaza, turned 1 yesterday in captivity. So, Kfir, wherever you are, Yom Holedet Sameach, happy birthday. Kulanu mitpalelim b'shvilcha, we're all praying for you. I have 2 questions about the recent U.S. intel report that came out regarding the Shifa Hospital being used as a Hamas command and control center. First of all, can you share with us what new information has come to light now that we didn't already know back in November when the Israelis took control of the complex?
I'm not aware of any new information that has come to light since the Israeli operation at Al-Shifa.
So this recent intel assessment is only confirming what we already knew then?
It is.
Okay. And my second question is, what's your reaction to U.S.-funded agencies like UNRWA that have had a presence in these hospitals, that have had schools that is being alleged to have been used as stockpiles for weapons? Does this make them complicit in any way? How does the administration view this? And is there any way that you plan on adjusting your strategy moving forward as far as dealing with UNRWA and other such agencies?
UNRWA, the UN relief agency, does important work. In fact, they're doing a lot of heavy lifting right now in terms of trying to get food, water, medicine to the people of Gaza all up and down the Strip. They're doing a lot of work, and they're doing it in harm's way, very much so in harm's way. And you can't hold them accountable for the depredations of Hamas and the way Hamas uses civilian infrastructure, including hospitals, for command and control, for storage of weapons, for the holding of hostages.
Shouldn't they at the very least raise the alarm if their own facilities are being used in a military?
Look, I'll let the UN speak to their agency and what alarms they want to raise or not. We
gave them $1 billion.
They do good work in Gaza, and they are important to helping get the humanitarian assistance to the people of Gaza. And we're grateful for that work that they're doing, very much in harm's way. I'll let them speak to whatever concerns they have over Hamas's activities and the degree to which that they feel obligated to speak out or not. It's not some state secret here that Hamas hides itself in hospitals and schools and digs tunnels under residential complexes and neighborhoods. I mean, this is what the Israelis are up against, a group that absolutely doesn't abide by the laws of war and has no compunction about putting civilian lives in greater danger.
If I could ask you very quickly, John, about the U.S. service member's mother and uncle who were safely freed thanks to a rescue operation from Gaza. It happened in the last several days. I know the U.S. military was not directly involved in this. Can you tell us what role the U.S. played in any way, how this came to be, how the White House became aware of the situation? What, if anything, can you tell us about those circumstances?
Yeah, Peter, well, first of all, we're glad they're out. I'd couch this more as part and parcel of an ongoing effort that we have had, working with Israeli counterparts and the Egyptians to allow for safe passage of Americans out of Gaza. I mean, this is part and parcel of that larger effort.
So this being related to a U.S. service member didn't make it any different than any other American you would be trying to get out? Because it's not clear, I think the uncle was a U.S. citizen, it's not clear that the mother was. I just didn't know if there was any unique circumstances here.
No, certainly considered them for all intents and purposes, of course, considered them Americans, and we're glad that they're out. There was no U.S. military involvement here. This wasn't some sort of special operation to get them out.
Understood. Then if I could ask just one other separate question. Would the U.S. support Israel if it pursued and killed members of Hamas leadership in another country within the bounds of international law, say if it happened in Qatar?
I don't want to get into specific hypotheticals here.
We could go down. Right, the responsibility to do it as long as it's within international law. So would that also apply to Qatar?
We could go down a lot of rabbit holes here, Peter. I'm not going to get into hypotheticals. As I said, they have a right and a responsibility to go after Hamas leadership. Our expectations are that they'll do that in accordance with international law.
Andrew, you have the last question.
Can you just add a little bit more detail on Russia? Can you say how many ballistic missiles Russia is hoping to get from Iran?
These are close-range ballistic missiles that you're talking about. I don't have that level of detail. We don't believe a deal has been consummated, so it's difficult to get into too much detail beyond that.
And you said that there are several, that Russia has received several ballistic missiles from North Korea. How many are remaining that could still be shot into?
Yeah, that's the question, sort of a similar question to what I got before. I'm not at liberty to go beyond the information that I was able to give you at the top here. Okay?
Thanks, Admiral. Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, John.
Thank you. Thanks, Admiral. All right, Colleen, you want to reset us?
Yes. Okay, so on Senator Menendez from yesterday, does the president believe that the senator should have any access to sensitive information given the gravity of the allegations against him? And
look, as you just said, this is serious. The situation is very serious, and we have said that many times before. We think it is important, right, that he did indeed step down from the chairmanship. I'm just not going to get beyond that. I want to be really careful here. But again, we see this as very serious, and we think that it's the right thing to do that he stepped down from his chair.
As the leader of the party, should the president be calling for the senator's resignation in general?
Just not going to get beyond what I just said. And what we believe as far as anything else, whether it's resigning or anything else that's related to Senator Menendez and his role and him as a senator, obviously, in Congress, that's something for the Senate leadership to decide.
Okay. And then on the school shooting in Iowa, I wondered if you could talk about anything the White House has upcoming on gun safety or gun control, and what more can the White House be doing this year as we're looking at another shooting?
Look, and I stated in the top how we're just a couple of days in, right? We're just a couple of days into the new year, and we're talking about another shooting, and that is heart-wrenching and that is heartbreaking. And as I stated at the top, enough is enough. And we're going to continue certainly to call on Congress to act. Obviously, Congress did act in a bipartisan way, passing the first comprehensive piece of anti-gun violence legislation that the president signed. And so we are happy that we got there, and the president obviously has taken more action than any president in his first 2 years, signing more than 24 executive orders to deal with this epidemic that is the #1 killer of our kids. And so, look, we have to keep doing the work. And what I can say is just last month, we hosted the largest ever White House convening of state legislators to discuss actions that they can take to end this epidemic of gun violence. And so we also announced the Safer States initiative to drive additional progress from investments in gun crime prevention and intervention to common sense laws to keep guns out of dangerous hands. And so we're going to keep doing that. And this is, again, this is a president that has taken unprecedented action here. We're always going to look for other ways to deal with this. We've started, obviously created the first anti-gun violence office, which is incredibly important. It's helping communities it's going to help communities like the community in Iowa, but also implement. We also have to implement these more than 24 executive actions that the president signed into law. Okay, JJ.
On the child tax credit, would President Biden be open to a tax deal that includes a child tax credit being expanded and renews the expired research tax credits?
So obviously the president strongly believes that any bill that is out there in Congress that certainly cuts taxes for big corporations must cut taxes for working people and families with children, right? Especially to reduce child poverty. That's why the American Rescue Plan, the first piece of legislation that this president signed that only had Democrats' votes on it, was so important because it had that child tax credit in it. And what we learned from that is it helped cut child poverty by nearly half. And so obviously this is something that the president supports. And so we'll see. We will see what Congress brings forth.
So the part about renewing the expired research tax credits, he also supports that?
So that is something that I need to be really mindful and talk to our team here about that. I just don't have anything beyond that, but obviously this is something that is incredibly important to the president. We want to make sure that what bill comes out, if there is a bill that comes out in this legislative session, as it gives tax cuts for big corporations, that it must also give tax cuts for working families. That is something that we have seen from this Congress in the last legislation putting forth those types of bills, and so that's what the president would certainly want to see.
Thank you, Karine. On the southern border, in an interview with CBS News, House Speaker Johnson said on his first day in office, President Biden came in and issued executive orders that began this chaos. Did any of the administration's policies contribute to the record number of border crossings?
What I can say is this. On his first day in this administration, the president put forth a comprehensive immigration piece of legislation to deal with a broken system. That's what the president did, to deal with a broken system. We were just a couple of weeks away of 3 years ago that legislation that he put forward to Congress to actually deal with an issue, right? And so that's what I can say. The president understands that there's a problem at the border. He put forth on his first day something to deal with that problem. And what we continue to see from Speaker Johnson and Republicans, House Republicans, I know Jackie asked a question about something that I said yesterday in May, and I'll repeat it. I repeat what I said yesterday. In May, House Republicans decided to vote on a bill that would cut 2,000 Border Patrol agents at the border. That's what they did. That's what they did. And they continue to obstruct and get in the way of the president wanting to move forward with a supplemental that includes border security. They're getting in the way of it. They are. While Senate Republicans and Democrats in a bipartisan way are trying to find a way, a bipartisan agreement to deal with border security, you have House Republicans who left. They left in the middle of December, and I think they come back next week. Maybe they'll get some work done. Instead, they're playing politics.
So is that a no?
Look, what I can say is what the president has done. I'm not going to speak to data. I have not seen any data that would show this, so certainly I can't speak to that. What I can say is the actions and what the president has done and how seriously he has taken this on his first day, understanding that this system has been broken for decades. This immigration system has been broken for decades. Under a Republican president, under a Democratic president, it has been broken.
And as negotiations continue, are there any red lines for the White House when it comes to negotiating what Republicans are demanding when it comes to policy?
Look, I'm going to stay consistent here. I'm not going to negotiate from here, from the podium. I'm going to let folks who are negotiating, the senators, both on the Democratic side and obviously on the Republican side, who are negotiating this. Obviously, we have been involved. They've been talking through the holidays. We really appreciate their efforts here. We think we're headed in the right direction, and so we're gonna. It is best from this podium to not get involved and not inject myself into the conversation, and so we're gonna let them do their job.
Thank you.
Okay.
On House Republicans and getting this supplemental request passed, House Republicans have made clear to this point that they are not interested in signing off on a border deal, anything short of H.R. 2, which they passed. So is there any outreach from the White House to House Republicans to try to get the supplemental across the finish line and get a deal?
They went home in December. They literally, but they really literally went home in mid-December. That's what.
Is it a miscalculation by the White House to not be in touch with House Republicans who are necessary to get this?
We're in regular touch with Senate Republicans who are at the table with us, with other Democrats in the Senate, having a real conversation about a bipartisan agreement. I mean, they're talking for themselves. They basically took action by leaving in mid-December while the Senate side was actually having conversation to deal with an issue. They're playing politics. So I'm going to let them, their actions are speaking for themselves. We're going to have a real conversation where the negotiation is actually happening in good faith with both Democrats and Republicans in the Senate, and that matters. That matters. And so we think it's going in the right direction. We want to continue to have those conversations. It's been happening for some time now. And so we'll let them put something forward, and we'll move from there.
Lastly, though, but if House Republicans are slamming White House immigration policies, why is the White House not in touch with those Republicans who, again, would need to approve of a deal to get the critical supplemental request that you've talked about?
I'm not saying that we're not going to have, at some point, we're not going to have a conversation with House Republicans. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that their actions have proven to everyone where they stand on this. So we're having a productive conversation with Senate Republicans and Democrats to find a bipartisan agreement, because we understand the system is broken. It's been broken for decades, the immigration system, and that is important. Let's not forget, this is a president that has been able to come together with Republicans and put forth hundreds of bipartisan agreements, legislation that have been turned into, that he signed into law. That's something that he understands how to do. His team understands how to get that done. But, House Republicans, again, they left in mid-December and have not returned to actually deal with this in a real way. Instead, they're playing politics. That's what we're seeing. I'm not saying that conversations are not going to happen. Obviously, we have to have the House be involved in this too. But right now, the productive conversations are happening in the Senate.
Just based on that last answer, has there been a breakdown in the relationship between the White House and the House?
I wouldn't say there's a breakdown of relationship. What I will say is just we're calling out what we're seeing. We're calling out what we're seeing. I mean, it's the facts. They left in mid-December, and who was left to continue to have the conversation as it relates to the border, right? The border security was the Senate. And when we've had and we're having conversation with both Republicans and Democrats in the Senate.
I have two completely unrelated questions. Sure. Apologies for
Nope.
hogging time.
No apologies. Go for it.
The president did have this lunch with historians, and I'm wondering if there are any details you can share about that, and also, what about this particular moment has him reaching out to historians?
So look, the president has done this before. Here's something. Okay. I heard a voice. No worries, Jackie. I thought I was hearing things, but I'm not. I was like, I'm the only person that's hearing it. Okay. Okay. You and me. Okay. Okay. So look, The president tends to, and he's done this before, he's met with historians before ahead of an important national moment, which we're about to see, certainly as it relates to January 6th. And he met with these historians, a diverse group of historians, to hear from them, to hear directly from them on their thoughts about our democracy here in this country and abroad. And the president felt it was incredibly important to hear from this diverse group of historians. And again, he's done this before. It's not the first time. And so it also, I think this says a lot about how the president sees things more broadly. He believes in hearing from a diverse group of people, hearing different voices on policy issues, and certainly something as important as our democracy. And that's what you essentially saw from this president yesterday.
And then just one more thing. How concerned is the president about what appears to be a pretty botched rollout of the federal financial aid form? It was due to be out in October, then it was a drop-dead deadline at the end of the year. Now there's this soft launch that is going quite poorly, and there's like hundreds of thousands of American families trying to figure out paying for college.
So look, I do want to take a little bit of a step back here and just lay out a little bit of what we've been able to do over the weekend. So they, as you stated, they initiated the soft launch, the Department of Education, with the goal of ramping up volume over time to monitor the site performance and create a better experience, obviously, for students and families. And so this is consistent with us trying to put forward best practices. That's what you're seeing here. And just the other night, more than 400,000 applications had been completed, so that's important. The application opened at 8 a.m. on that yesterday, and it will be open for the majority of today, obviously. And so this better application process will make college more affordable and a reality for more students. That is what this administration fights for every day. And so obviously the Department of Education could speak more specifically on details. But this is part of our best practices. We're trying to do our best to make this process easier for families and students. And so look, it's going to take a little bit of time, right? It is, but they've been working through it. The Department of Education has been working through this through the weekend. And so we're seeing some better improvements here, and I think that's important. Go ahead. I didn't get to you. Go ahead.
Could you give us some more information about the president's talk tomorrow, his visit to Valley Forge, which was pushed up from Saturday?
Say that last part.
It was pushed up from Saturday because I guess we're going to have a snow.
Yeah. So as you heard from the campaign, I just want to be careful because this is a campaign event, so don't want to get too far ahead of the president. Obviously, the campaign could share a lot more details about the trip tomorrow, and as you just stated, it was meant for him to be there on the actual day of January 6th because of the weather, potential weather conditions. He's going to be there tomorrow on Friday. So what I will say is that and the president has said this many times before, January 6th was an unprecedented, certainly attack on our core principles in our democracy and the rule of law in our Constitution. And so this is something that the president takes very seriously. And so, and let's not forget, January 6th cost the lives of police, injured many police officers, and inflicted bodily harm on many people. It was a sight that was horrific. We saw a Confederate flag flying in the halls of the Capitol, and that's what we were dealing with. It was disrespectful to our Constitution, an attack on our democracy, and the president, and let's not forget, these are values that we hold very close as a country, as a nation. And so the president's going to continue to speak about this. He's going to continue to be very vocal about this, and so certainly you'll hear that from the president, but I want to be really careful because it is a campaign political event, so I don't want to get too far into it.
Why the choice of Valley Forge as opposed to
He'll
doing
speak more to that tomorrow. I'll let the president speak to that. All right, go ahead, Garen.
The NAACP and community leaders are decrying a ruling from a judge in Jackson, Mississippi, a predominantly black city, the capital of Mississippi, that would allow state leaders to appoint a judge and prosecutors as opposed to the residents being able to elect those that judge and prosecutors. They say this is racial discrimination and an issue of democracy. Does the White House have a position on this ruling?
So as you know, it's an ongoing litigation, so I want to be careful we don't comment on ongoing litigations. But while the Federal Appeals Court temporarily halted this decision from moving for now, it's important that every state respects the democratic process and the will of the people. That is something that the president believes. And the denial of self-governance is an affront to the democratic values on which our nation was founded. And so the people of Jackson, certainly like any other American across the country, they deserve to have their voices heard. That is important. That is something that the president believes, certainly, and also the vice president and the rest of the administration believes. So I'll leave it there because, as you know, the litigation is continuing.
Tomorrow's job report numbers that will come out tomorrow. The White House has touted a lot of last year's record low black unemployment rate, but that only tells one part of the story in terms of the black economy. While black wealth has increased, so has the racial wealth gap. Home ownership for black Americans continues to be at just as low as it was in the 1960s, and the price of homes is still pretty high. Are there any indicators that the White House can point to that suggests that the economic conditions for black Americans will improve this year?
Yeah, so I have a couple of indicators that I'm happy to go through with you. I'll say this at first, though. The president has talked about investing in America. He talks about his Bionomics plan and how it helps all Americans and make sure it doesn't leave anybody behind. And one of the things that, as part of that, one of the things that the president has done with his plan is make sure that we invest in black communities. That is something that the president finds to be incredibly important so that we do not leave communities behind. And you saw the president go to Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where he visited a black small businesses and talked about how black small businesses have been essentially growing under this administration, and that's important, and by millions. The numbers by millions more broadly on small businesses being created on this administration, so that's important. So a couple of things that we saw data because of the American Rescue Plan that the president signed, the first piece of legislation that he signed that only Democrats voted for in Congress. We've seen a couple of things. Over 2.5 million black Americans have gained jobs, and the black unemployment fell from 9.2% to 5.8%. Black wealth is up at a record 60% since 2019. That's something that you just stated in your question to me. The number of black households owning a business has more than doubled since 2019, and black business ownership is growing at the fastest pace in 30 years. And something else, too. There's 2/3 of new clean energy jobs are in communities of color, including nearly 60,000 in black communities. And let's not forget the insulin cap, right, for our seniors that the president was able to get done under the Inflation Reduction Act. That's going to have a huge effect on black communities as well. So these are the actions that the president has been able to take through legislation, right, very, very important legislative actions that we have seen communities like the black community be able to see an investment in their communities and also not be left behind like they have been for decades. Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, thanks. I'm going to ask you about electric vehicles. So Ford today says that in 2023, last year, their EV sales accounted for 3.6% of their overall sales. GM says that it only sold half of what their target was for EV sales. Any consideration to moving some of those EV mandates back and let the technology and market preference catch up?
So Ed, I'll say to you that we have seen 51% of an increase in EV sales. 51%, that's the numbers, and that's across the board. You know, that's the data that we have seen. I'm sure you've seen that number as well. And so I think that's pretty important. As we talk about climate change, clean energy, that's important that we're seeing such a boost in electric vehicles.
But when you look at the actual numbers, like GM sold 2.6 million cars and trucks in 2023, 76,000 of those were EVs. Ford sold 2 million cars and trucks, 73,000 were EVs. So clearly about 96% of the consumer is saying that they don't want electric vehicles. So why not?
We saw a 51% increase in electric vehicles. That's what we've seen, Ed, and that's important to note. Okay. Okay. Good.
Thanks.
Sorry.
No worries. What's the White House's reaction to members of President Biden's own administration protesting, or the case of somebody at the Department of Education this week resigning in protest against the president's policies on Israel and Gaza?
Look, we've spoken to this before, and what we'll say is that people have the right to voice their opinion. We understand that these are times where, people have, it's an emotional time, and we understand that. As it relates to, I think, the Department of Education, I know they put out a statement, so I would refer you to the Department of Education, but that is something that we get. Like, people have opinions, they have thoughts. These are incredibly, personal times for people, right? But I'm not going to say much more on each resignation or each comments that people may have. I will just on that particular one, I would refer you to Department of Education.
Back on that president's speech tomorrow on democracy, in a December AP poll, 8 in 10 Republicans said democracy would be weakened if Biden were reelected, and that was also the view of 56% of independents. So is the president's speech tomorrow aimed at trying to convince Republicans and independents otherwise, or is it more aimed at sort of rallying Democrats about how important an issue this is?
So I appreciate the question. Tomorrow's a political campaign event speech, so I'm not going to get into the reasoning behind what the president is there for, right, specifically on a campaign basis. I'm not going to get into his remarks or his speech. That is something that the campaign can deal with directly on this particular question. What I can say more broadly of what the president has said about January 6th and how it's an attack on our democracy, our fundamental values, how it was unprecedented, and how we have to continue to speak out, and it is important to do so. I can't speak to your specific question about outreach or the campaign, anything related to the 2024. Go ahead, Karen.
Thanks. Some hospitals in at least 8 states have brought back some form of masking now due to rising cases of respiratory viruses, including flu and COVID. Does the White House think more hospitals across the country should be considering that right now?
The masking piece, that is, and we've always been very consistent on this. That is something that is localized or hospitals, communities, cities, states, they have to make their own decisions. That's not something that we get involved in.
And how about Americans broadly now? There's 31 states in the latest data that have high or very high levels of respiratory illness, RSV, flu, and COVID. What should Americans be doing with the recommendation?
So, look, it is up to each and every American to make their decision on what they want to do. We have a range of tools, right? That is something that we've been able to do these last 3 years for people to protect themselves from the impact of COVID, whether it's a vaccine, whether it's at-home testing, whether it's treatments, right? All of these things are incredibly important. So there are tools available for folks, and we're going to certainly encourage Americans to take those steps. We're not going to. It is up to them. It is up to them as it relates to masking what individual Americans want to do. That is not something that we're going to regulate.
Back here. What do you say?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
It's unbelievable. Unbelievable.
I love you so much, James. Go ahead. Go ahead. It is.
On gun control, you mentioned the 2022 bill the president signed.
Yeah.
Do you think that that bill is having an impact on the number of mass shootings that we're seeing now?
So look, I think that piece of legislation certainly was important. It is taking steps for states, for example, and states to take actions to deal with gun violence in their communities, but we need more. We're always going to say we need more. The president also took, as I mentioned earlier, 24 actions, right? Executive actions to deal with gun violence, the epidemic that we're seeing across the country. But honestly, the way that we're going to deal with this is to have legislation that deals with high-capacity magazines, assault weapons ban. That's how we're going to move forward, a national red flag ban, and that's how we're going to deal with this epidemic that we're seeing across the country. That's why we keep saying enough is enough. Congress needs to act. Yes, it was important that we took this step. 30 years. It took 30 years to sign that bipartisan, not to sign, but to get that bipartisan legislation done, and the president obviously signed it, but we need more. It is not enough. That's what we believe. It's just not enough. All right, everybody. I'll see some of you tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you.
boot?
Yeah, mine, yeah.
So my name's Anya. Okay, nice to meet you. You're a star, but yeah.
Okay, let me get this board. Actually, nothing else to call.
Yo, it's next.
Just arrived.
Next event.
Ya prendo a câmera dele.
This is compared to your share. It's yeah, it's not very massive. There's a even with like less than
This one. Hang keren dulu.
Guys, can I ask you a huge favor? If you don't mind. I can move. I just want to get the board and the engines, but unless you want to be in my shop, that's also fine. Thanks, guys.
something personally. Okay, she's the only thing that's interesting. Okay. See, the potato is capital.
I didn't call you. I just said
No, now I'm noticing you are alive. That's a potato.
I know. I've been counting.
We are eating nothing. Which is your couch? You come here to see. You reckon? Things are for you. These are all. Those two guys are there. Yeah. So like go inside, extend there in your phone, and leave the car. Yeah. So just to because we're prepared to be the other one says, there is the college people. It's a guys, Alex, it's a baki. It's open.
So do you want to do a test? Like,
I think
no, it's a baki that.
Tiki. Oh. I can't. Why do you have it? runs for him. Remember those water so yeah, those boys, yeah. You know what happened? That's what he paid. They were driven individually by these Vikings, yeah, individually from the prison to conference. So when they go to conference, European, yeah, just stay by in the road. They parked there. Then two officers came out and walked them in. It happened to happen in this year. Walked them into conference. They shot the people in, and then they so they then went inside conference and process. After processing, they came out with the families. Which was, yeah, going to the but completely underground coffee, things like that. I think people just need a smaller car and go but he said because this area is very close, he said because they don't want the same thing themselves. Yeah. I doubt that they will carry but another thing is that the military the security aspect was not because remember we were still in the those guys
But if I could choose another year, then choosing definitely. It is if you can work on the
safety prison you work, I doubt here the numbers. These ones are only surprised. But once we see when the person comes to that's right. Those guys are only they get the adrenaline. Yes, the story with those guys said. The one guy says it's really when it's open, the way to go open, like the official open, is started to sleep now. Because in prison where they are straight, yes, no, not that we are not there, we are there, but this guy can say, and the story those guys tell, our world no, definitely, now, yeah. I'm gonna say this because remember these folks are alive. So we gotta say something to someone. Yeah, I'm saying.
I don't think they're gonna run
No, for me definitely. Yeah, for me they'll use that stuff. For me just. So, when you open the cover, it's going to my friendship. Was there another cover? Not because Lunali lied, I have to send something. I must make something. No, I did. You are going to have to go. I want to look at patrol. So when you go to, we tried speaking to that. I went up there. Two kids, I was up there. There were two. Yeah, there were two of them. So I said to him, I'm sorry, man. Sorry. After you guys, I'm feeling it when I'm Family. It sounds like I don't think this guy's I think the river state continue as it is. I'm trying to see here. don't think pointers is, because pointers, I mean, you literally have to, especially when you leave, maybe they can drive you in and make corrections, drive you to the building. But when you go, yeah, like your family joins you there and then they sign you, you literally have to walk out to your car, your vehicle. So I doubt they'll want that to happen. Yeah, yeah, what is that? Hey, shop is it? Hey, friend. Hey, long time. Hey, long time, bro. Shop. What are that? Hey, shop, shop. Excellent. You shop with me, bro. Hey, great. Yeah? Friend, what's up? If you are here, then it means it's going home. They saw you guys and they're like, you know, man, wake up. Go ahead. Hello.
How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Alright.
Cool, cool. No, when it's like the what's that four guys? They literally, they were walking. They dropped them off there, walking to pointons, signs, walk out with the family in the cars they parked just in there. Have you? Your life again on Twitter. On Twitter, me. You'll never see me. What you experience? The only pictures we have was the TRC. So if you let him go there, yeah, you pick him up. You empty him there, and then family drives and picks him up people from the officer okay. I don't care if you like see nothing. Hey, Shapuzi. Hey, Shop Shop. Hey, Mohomo, okay. Must go near my sister. You don't need a mic, you don't do it now. What you use for? Yeah. That's it. So you have to come back again in the morning now. Thanks. If you don't get some, it's no money. It's very cool, but if you leave, I have to make like 6. No, we need to charge those things. So you have to get something back. It's a very good. I don't know if it's like, it's in every time. Please, you'll try to so the baking can go far. This one is here. This one is here. Oh, yeah, how much is it? Kirby, organize this in the party. You said they may not be political system here, right? You are the one who's nice. There was a birthday party before. But is that not really the same thing? We really wanted to say so. Not really. Yeah. Are you talking like physically, like to have language? We talk about it. That is something. Yeah. But we took our time. No, we want to. So, what are you going to what? Or you going to show someone? What you want? Go and teach them. Nobody wants news and sports. But it doesn't mean that you develop the TV. Everyone is streaming. Just go on YouTube. You want to watch YouTube? Go on YouTube. Oh, I see what you mean. Okay. So the news channels just get them there. Yeah. What are you doing for YouTube? I follow you guys. You are doing the same. That's what people say. I couldn't even waste my time with this. You want to follow the results. We go to the stadium. You see, then you see, can you imagine Irish playing in my chair Wednesday, 8:30. I'm sitting there and watching. The stadium, what do I free? No, I get it. No, I understand what you're saying. No, I understand what you're saying. You know, we are just not being respected as the community. PSA, what nonsense is that in Salute? They don't go in there and mind you. How many solutions? It's like a phone. That's the last time I was there. No. Also start with that boy, bring the yoke people and it's a professional game.
Zadingi. Sorry, yes, man. Oh, yeah. Oh.
So, of course, No, I don't see him as the problem. Did you see the other when he called them the press conference? Stop signing. Hey, did you win? And then you had Jane himself. Yeah. And guess which is number one? 10. 10. They thought maybe he signed a deal with some player, you know. But the one municipality. No, it was real. Municipality is sponsoring this thing. Chill out. So you are not contributing for all.
Guys, come on.
I'm thinking you're going to a stadium we are warning team, and they want to pay players in the team.
Did you see that?
That was that video. Dude, there were these two guys. I could hear their voices. They were saying in the net, I'm going to blame them for let's do this business in the dressing room next year and come on.
But watching now, how do you motivate as a player? People are all serious. Now you want to score and whatever.
See, now we've got serious problems. Why allow a brand in Celtic? How long? Are you trying to tell me that the phone base there? It's there. Of course, you are like you are choose name pattern. Uzoza, choose. Now you are giving that people, and I couldn't pick it down. And then I said, when I'm watching the woman side. Handicap, how much is about correct? Normal guys. That's a phone in number. Perfect. It was actually weird when he ran changed status. Yes. And I thought that it's an opportunity for a black female. Yeah. She's there fighting the battles of South. Fighting for to run. Yeah, but let's see. I don't know the answer. I was here. And then they announced this boy as a trainee. I was there thinking that he will copy in Panoramsi. Then it means we've got no, but you know, I mean, I thought probably I'm not in land which you see. The face of I don't even think you are Panoramsi. That will get to go there with Chile China. You can make that the same with your Panoramsi. The hiring professionals, when you say they are moved to supersports of weather, which you will see them, you consider the later, you play to get in the car around your car. Then we are encouraged as young people to say, now you've got a new crop of leaders in this field. And I realized that he wants to play Iran AF was playing Chiefs. But then Uzon. Then Uzon, the coach who went Iran AF, Kabozon. He left because he got with me in the car. Yeah, no way. You don't talk about it, but like seriously, I'm really not bored. They take him out. Yeah, he was stuck in bed and they take him out and he gets he's throwing 3 times. One game in a space of 30 minutes in the league. 3 goals. First half. Then but I think look at honestly, I've watched him. He's got a bit of a touch, you know. It's like for this like understands what he's supposed to do. But because he's a fucking boy, it's all about him. I disagree. So that's why if you were you grew up in the country, playing soccer for the States, you understand the basis of it. No, you understand the basics of football and then play. If 95% you can play, you go to play. Now, if I told you to sit down, would you play lunch? And I said, yes, just work with Phil to be smart. Just work with Phil, because Phil has the basics. Now, when you get your first child, this is your gymnasium. And then we come back and then we say, why sometimes you take the room? No, but my wife
The last time. Oh, this last one. Where Pirates won. Oh, very good. Pirates versus United. No, I know your point. Yeah. So Marasin to as same thing. Same thing. Mara yesterday. Oh, yes. And then very mango. When you just mention local media, if they will feel like no more things around them, we still have an image. Yeah, when you are watching that, guys, but you sit next to me, you like to go any I can guarantee you, when our emergency, and if they want to announce my only few people will hear. Yeah, but I guess, yeah, even like the moment I have to go, we still why, man? That is how. Oh yeah, this is the last time we were there. That's my mistake. What's the stadium? You know, look at this man. I didn't choose those fucking idiots. They wanted to. Oh no, I'm like, I know. Some of them I keep. Oh yeah, I remember.
ke tla nne ke fula but at least they are ba ke na lo a lot but like o batla this guy batla gore wiza mo gilala la o ja bo to bereka ka di simola nyane nyane ya simola nyane se skrile za mo zam wena o tla bona ha ke be le gore la e tla pushega. Then you can tell so that's what I'm trying to do. I didn't think it's quite happened. And he was apologizing. This guy. I was I don't want to feel like he was a police or and a cafe is a resignation. Yeah, and then why is this really like that? It's just a minor disagreement. For sure, it's normal. Especially the local media. I guess let's take you again. The way you want to make it. What would you do? Okay, what? Like yeah, I think no, it's not only you understand? Like it, like it. Hey, he was gonna help you. I remember him story. They even have multiple girlfriends. When there's a problem with the phone, he comes the process of giving understanding. You know, if that's the issue, I guess Belgium. Send me like one for example. You understand? The person you can't because you don't understand. This happened. I don't need to. I made that I can stomach. Those are entertaining. No, yeah. And in Tonga, I got financial problems. So, how do I? I'm in the peak. Yeah. You know when I'm going to fucking do it? Probably 3 days before the next time. They'll either put it on Biden or I'll have to run and go and beg the supper official for Nam and then for 2 days. Oh yeah, yeah. You understand what I'm saying? Sorry, right? No, days ahead. It's like even a thing. Yes. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Yeah. So, but be that as a thing. I mean, football is different. I mean, okay, the football culture is not one to justice goes in a week before or 2 days before. I understand that part. But on match day, come on, man. We know who fucking starts, who's not going to start. Or even if it changes, it's fine. The part of the team, you know, they are there. Give me that. Who starts is irrelevant to me. As long as I've sent back teams wherever, and the person has got all the names, you know, getting around this, because it's easy for them to do what they do shortcuts. Siabongasi, SS, his name appears, you know, because it's a long caption that you do. You say South African defender Siabongasi, you know. If you, yeah, so you need to import that metadata prior to the name. We usually do it the night before. So if I can edit it myself, then I'll do it the night before. I'll fix it when I come to this. But
you guys are still hung over from the 2010 World Cup.
You know what I then did? I realized these sports anchors, and then they got the team before. So I'll go to them and see the story. Then I just, oh yeah, sure. Then I take it. But then why? That girl, that's her job. It's her job. But yo, dude, I promise you. I promise you. It's little things. They're not part of the bigger apart. Yeah. Get us out. That's South Africa. Always be cool. That's South Africa. Anything there is to do.
These guys, now, a spokesperson, whatever the case may be,
what time is it?
Is more important than the case.
You have to call them.
Yeah, just WhatsApp.
I'm still waiting for somebody to explain to me which level savings in our heart.
You're John.
I'm waiting for somebody to explain which level savings in our heart.
Stand in front of you. She doesn't run to stand in front of you.
And then makes all these comments that one day something will happen because when Mr. President, yeah. One day we will hear stories about they think one day
Children are going to shoot someone.
nawe bawumlanda amakhutmana omlando wona njani
Surely la man are you Marina, she runs who?
Then our parents is responsible.
Okay.
He is responsible. Kusela is there. Yeah. Then so my understanding is that you've got GCIS, where these guys are supposed to be getting resources from there.
Yeah.
So what ORT is doing, they will have gotten somebody from the GCIS to say, there's a team, this is your job, but you are hired by GCIS. Now that one comes from Lutuli House. Now this is what happens. 1 minute she speaks as Injara Matamela in the office as a presidency. Next minute she speaks as ANC affairs. And just defending the Bona, which is nonsense. Umatamela, you can't see any picture. She's there.
That's the problem,
You can't see that. When the guys got stuck in Poland and they are nonsense again. The whole thing now is about art. What is a job? I'm praying this year. Yeah, so the country is over in chaos, and then people get to realize that in actual fact, for fucking 30 years, these guys have just been chaos. We have some friends, even some 10,000 uyabona ukuthi in a way ngathi sesizokhompyutha la ukuthi mina ngori igudi but nori igudi umuntu uyambuza ukuthi okay what was the outcome of parent eminye yesterday ukuthi when you guys go to organize and then you are not this plenary session your branch says you must attend the plenary session baby on international relations and what peers. You must go there with them. How now a passport? I was why I'm not in suit. And then you must go make inputs there. That will influence the party, so to influence the government. Yeah. Then you've got somebody who's sitting with plenary education. This person has never even done or early childhood development. But this person is expected to shape policy. Even with the government, they're not serious. They're not serious. I mean, again, what is taxation? I think it's to stand in front of you. And this thing is frustrating. That thing is frustrating. Why can't it be? I'm so I do so one thing you must ask me. Because at least you can see sometimes we organizing what interview like this. You understand what I'm doing? You know, so there's so many people that you have to fight there. It's like a battalion. If it's not you who are chicken, then that's really. No, I cannot remove it. What do you say in the No, but remember, don't think that they don't necessarily do it. It's us. You know, that's the problem. You know when you make an effort to be an asshole? Huh? Yeah, you work at it. It's not, it doesn't come naturally. You work at it, you think about it, and you work and you do it. He makes an effort to be an ass. So the other time. So remember the tete-a-tete thing? Yeah. Look, it can and it cannot be a thing, right? If we don't have it, we don't have it. But sometimes we kind of need it, you know, because of certain things. Yeah. Now, I can't remember which sort of state it was, but anyway, there was that tete-a-tete thing. So Elmon, he did not see that it was so quick that he went in, he thought he came out. Yeah. So he complained. It's like he tells the security there. So, when he appeared, we were standing sort of our posture and stance. It was as if we want to go in. Yeah. Then he thought, and not knowing that we've been in, we just came out, we just standing there next to the protection area. So he goes to those guys and he says, but the other guy, the guy is talking to, what? These guys have long been in there. But because this one is loud, I want to see that now with a kid. He says, no, these guys, they've long been inside. They came out. Then he turns, he looks at me and says, oh, so you guys be sharp. You know, like, I understand the trying part now. Yeah, he makes an effort. I just looked him in the eye and I looked the other way. And then he went inside. And then we had to exit in another. We didn't exit the same way. So he's standing there outside. He said, so who is the other guy? He realizes that he was, he was like, he's a fucking dick. And he also hit. So now he says, second time, I just got past it. Sunday, you remember? Sunday, and he needs a PT. What's that dead one? Sunday, you remember when you entered the church? And you told Brendan,
things are gonna one day. But you, I'll throw you out. I'll throw you out of this. Till the day you own a building, that's the day you are going to throw me out of that thing. Here, nothing like that is going to happen. And stop talking to me that way.
Oh, you know what? Last
Hey, I'm gonna throw you out.
he told me, no, I'm not supposed to be shooting here. You know when you can hear, and I can see just the corner of my eye. Yeah, Kubega. Then he comes to me, he says, Chief, you're not supposed to be doing what you do. Who are you? What you know, I work with the minister. I didn't ask what you do. I said, who are you? How do you know? I have had a very stressful moment. I've had a very stressful morning, and if you're going to come in with your shit, I'm not really here for that. Maybe if you want to go just play with my little partner there. But I ask you, I say, please.
I come early. I put my cameras, I booked a spot on my bed, then we walk out. When I came back, he's got his tripod at the exact same spot where my camera. He moved my camera elsewhere. Hey, I got you. What the hell? Hey, whose tripod is this? It's mine. What are you saying? Hey, no, man, hold on. But you moved my cameras. They were here. Yeah, this is not the line for photographers. It's video only here. Yeah, but stop talking shit, man. There's nothing like that. I came here early. You realize that you are late. Just ask me. I'm literally not going to say no. I'll just squat in front of you and whenever you're going to say. So it escalated. Nelson is watching. Nelson is watching. So it escalates. I told him, I'm like, now when the day you're going to only build, that's the day you're going to shoot me. It's not going to happen. And stop talking to me. I moved back by camera. So Nelson came and he came and said, no, don't do that. I saw this guy here, this camera is here. Yeah, but you know, it's video. As a video is Sanjay. Excellent. Correct. Indicator. No, there's an indicator there. Let me get my camera. Alex, let me just check. There's two cars coming in. Let me come in 2 minutes. I know that person. Oh. Sorry. Excellent. Oh, that's good. Some one. Yeah, yeah, and then he said he as what today. Yeah. Oh, so it means I cái mong gì đi
Really? Since you got it?
Since you got like an funny getting all I should do 40 minutes there. So this is the first show except perspective of yours. Yeah, I can see it. Yeah. Oh, you were right. Not a big deal. Yeah, it was somewhere there. I located it, it was just above this tree. It is a... I can improve yourself, right? You can have a good thing. What is it? No, this is what I got said like a man. That's in the guy.
Yeah, he's got a station. Yeah.
should do is to tell us, okay, we have 12, all media, take a picture, get it done. Because we're all going to be here. Yeah. Take a photo. I love you. It's always funny to me. Yeah.
Even to us, remember you when you come on the house, and it was like, but also, I think the president of course, I mean, they want to I see. I see the Muslim naive. Yeah? Second tax bill. We got it. I see the level. No, cannot keep South. I think I'm just resting my feet. Sitting in the car. No, that was fun. No, definitely fun. No, it's absolutely no. I don't know whether I interest for that. The man interest for saying that the movie. No, but it's definitely. I'm gonna do this. If it's like round about now, in the next hour.
No one got it.
No one.
They released him the night before they said they were going to. But apparently he was home by 10, but they released his statement.
but then remember, why I say that that's not at the house, that's close to the house. It's temporarily for us not to be there. So, because it drops down. So it's still but these cities are not just there's things. The people don't just put their houses up. Okay. How much? Remember because now there's a new mall for Lakeside. So they've been killing each other. Yeah, they shot 11 guys at some point and killed 4 because line A, they're trying to claim, they're trying to claim line to the mall. So people have to die before. What the hell is I know, but that's everywhere. Yeah. No, that's everywhere. So Philippines got that. After what happened to like Pulse? I don't know about
A first ele carregou e estava muito assustado, a máquina não funciona.
sit so vir 20 sekondes op, laat hy lig en laat en dan maak ek weer my voet. Hy het omtrent daar is 1000 voet is hy oor 8 ure.
Maar even net as jy so nou ver is, sterk, hy is nog iets anders.
Ja, dit is
hierdie kom hier is nog nie.
Nou hier is so baie light police hier. Daar is jy so ver weg, dis 5 ure van Kaapstad. Dit is so ver weg van die enigste stad op lig daar, daar's niks.
Daar sien jy actually die meldplek.
Ja, ek sien die ster, ja.
Jy kan nie daar nie daar geld sien. Dis eers kan die stad wat jy ooit sien. Ek sien wat ek doen ster.
Zijn
all of us. Dis kan die prijs tot afgedoen. Ek is gewoon van sterren. Ek stap op om te doen te aanpassen.
Dat was my wife is a friend. Dat was in Los Angeles met mense uit die Kirby. Polisie en fire department by die Los Angeles en staan uit die stad. So dat was spyt as jy die stad se ligte af as jy sien mense die sterre. Ek het geweet dat voor jare
heerlikheid.
Ek het geweet as jy toch al iets gekry.
Which I'm down to it. My wife's friend. Yeah, but hardly know. Oh, she's not speaking
the last time I was studying at school, so semester of the bank for 500 meter in a line of this.
Marina hates it.
Volgens het waar veilig is waar, India, so is allemaal wat dit is 'n baie veilige.
Maar wel, sona sera dia bali. Oh.
Ons het afstand, ons het allemaal mekaar te selfstap. Ja, nee, ons moet dink aan enige karre bijeenkom. Hulle wonder seker wie sien die mense hier op die straat. Ja, nee, ons is julle raai. Dankie Henriette. Dankie die incheck. Okay. Bye. Goed pas.
See, the concept of all I can say guys can here to Africanism. Never seen a power that can go on. Yes, how can you have to put on to also be okay, this is a bit weird. Why are you being fussy? It's for the reason you're weird. No, but the reason you're weird is that het allemaal aan je doet. Mensen komen. It's absolutely terrible.
Wat is jou mooi gesê?
So I got a photo van een pen. So I could say 200 mensen gaan op mijn kliënten 18 andere mensen. En dan kan ik. Ik weet het Mensen het mijn leven en ik kan het zoveel meer doen met het leven. Ik ben afleid voor wat. Ik kan het ook doen. Ik kan terugkomen en ik kan bedanken. Ik kan het doen. Ik is fucking verstandig. En ik terugkom is dat ik mij bedanken heb. Het is de beste ding wat ik ooit gedaan heb. 3 maanden later, na die werkschool in het eerste huis. Hier is zonder meer. Nee, wel, ik neem al voor 18 jaar af. Ik ben al in freelance al voor eeuwig en die was dan net 14 jaar van dit. Maar mijn bezigheid ben al voor jaren voorbij lang. Ik heb mijn bezigheid zo opgebouwd dat ik dus bezig om 7 dagen week en het is niet iets van mijn bezigheid en ik moest besluit maken, het is niet een keer. En mijn bezigheid is dus om goed te doen en ik gedeeld hoe kom ik klaar. Dus zo ik mijn cliënt ken, hij is een van de mensen dat ik voor afdoen. Ik kom terug in de bedankheid en absoluut incredible. Toen plofte die werk. Het is eigenlijk stromend. Zoals ik zeg. Ja, 3 maanden later kom ik ons eerste huis. Ik heb nooit gedacht dat mijn leven van huis komt. Alles is uitgewerkt.
Maar je veel werk in je uitgewerkt. Ja. Dat betekent dat je net niet doen.
Dus, ja, zeker.
Maar het is steen groot.
Dit is moersteen. Ja. Ja, oké, dat is het enige wat ik ooit gedaan. Dat was moersteen.
Wat kijk je mee? Dat is niet zo tijd.
Ja, dat is incredible. Dat is absoluut incredible.
Ja, dat is aardig hoor. Maar actually is het
ja, graag.
So daar kun je misschien ook krijgen.
Ja, niks gebeurd.
Laat ik kijken, ik kom met start en besluit eigenlijk dan.
Ja. Dus een mind-blowing experience was het gaan. De mensen wat je met is liefde, wat je die liefde wat je geleerd die hele warmte van mensen, het is terug in de wereld van mensen, wanneer je zelf gaat. Ja, hier ek op 'n bank gehouden. So ek weet nie of jy weet hoe dit werk nie. So die traktor wat ek gaan praat is so 100 jaar en al die diesels het so skip. Ja, so as jy nie hierdie flyer hier like en loop is sinte en dan kom jy net te loop en al die tente is so saal van hier en dan loop jy so in die traktor. So geen tente kan op die verder staan. En dan stap pas so reg hier aan die begin. En ek het hier uitgeloop en net so na een van die plekkies toe geloop waar hulle goed teken en so waar hulle sit staan, hulle het so wit bank gehad. Ek het net op die bank gesit, uitgetrek na die woestyn, maar net so uitgestaar en goed vind. Hier kom die Hollands ou, weer Hollands ou. Hier kom 'n ou groep en sê, "Maar is niks." Ja, goed. En ek sit langs my en ek het my verstaan van sy lewe en dan ek wou dit dan van my lewe in Suid-Afrikaans. Kan ek vir wyn of as ek wil die wyn? Ja, natuurlijk. Ik heb ook wijn genomen, dat ik een hoop vast was uit. Kijk ons wijn in. Hier sien we nou een praat, hier komt sy dolfin, die daar zo'n ding, en hulle gaan spies hulle self in. En hier sien die van ons, en daar 2 ure het ons tyd gesprek oor lewe en oor alles wat die mense doen. Dis ek hoe daai plek is, en jy moet die wonderlikste mense, en die wonderlikste gesprekke met mense, en jy het die wonderlikste experiences met mense. Ek kan nie glo, mense so liefdevol, so warm, en so ryk is. Ja, en mense word oop om te kan, jy loop net aan iemand en praat te kry, en ja, mense dink dis weird, en daar is het so normaal, voordat die ou langs op en sit, ek sit net op die bank, en loop so meisje voorbij, en sy kyk so vir my, en sy glas vir my sien, en aan het aan loop, en dit is nie die 20 minuten experience van mense, jy het een klein experience met die mense, en sien julle nooit in die website, dat is klein, maar vir die rest van jou week wat jy daar is, sal jy raak persoon nooit weer sien, jy sal op gesprek met iemand die rijkste wonderlijkste gesprek is met iemand die nooit weer sien, nooit in my lewe wil sien. Ek het nooit uit huis en honderd gevat nie, en die oomlik wat ek met my praat in die lewe, is ja, dis die enigste oomlik wat ek ooit ja, dis werkelijk. Die hele wereld sou beter wees as alles so was. Exactly. Dis die ding wat sy geleef, hulle het my gesê, dat vir die laaste wat ek geleef, ek het nie jaar weer, en ek het die person, as ek terugkom van Afrika, jy praat so makkelijk met mense, en mense kan nie op my naam toe, mense is so waarom, want jy dra en verkeer, daar is af, jy trek alles af. Ja, maar ja, jy kan my enigste ander gedoen. Mense is so oop en so warm en so welkom, praat met die mense, ons kan sit en langs mense, mense dansen oor, dis niks seksueel oor, niks lere oor, dis ook een oomlik is wat jy het met mense, en mense moet absoluut nie terug, en dan wil niemand met praat, want jy weet, as ek jou nie gekregen, so jy dink is weer, jy weet, teruggekom in die wereld waar niemand met mekaar contact het, vang jy, so jy raak die compulsion van jy moet terug in die wereld waar niemand met mekaar contact het, dit vang jy. So daai plek is nie moeilik. Ja, no, almost pension. Ah, no, and the rules sit al 10 mense om seker op die tyd waar hy gras is. Sit al 10 mense en baie maas sit tussen. En dan steek die baie maas in die brand. En iets so groot sien af van die verrassing van die hitte en die klank, is iets om te beleef. Ja, maar die ding wat afgebrand was 'n groot rooi aard. Dat was die grootste daar. Alles het uitgekom op die mense. Vir 4 dae. So omdat het donker is en in die skyn is, gebruik ek goed as 'n berg is. So ons kamp is daai net die rooi aard was, ons kamp nog daar is. As jy soos daar is waar daai berg is, dan bid jy vir die rooi aard, dan jy byna nie so kom jy kan ook nie sal tyd. Maar teen die whatever aard het die ding afgebrand en so vir 4 dae loop jy verby die pragtige rooi aard. En het middel van 'n punt, jy begin soos emosies te hê oor die mooi aan. En jy van 'n punt sit. Dat is mooi daar. Dit is iets om te beleef dat iets wat so mooi is, iemand gemaak het, nou brand af. So jy word nie op en wakker en hulle almal is in 'n kamp en hulle maak 'n bytjie wit saam en hierdie dag se daar en dan is dit staan so dan al die power down jy begin jou fancy klere aan te trek op die dag so en dan gaan jy en dan so spice man op die so sit en dan jy know wat kaptein sit en hier of die lapels gehad het en 'n hoed en so kaptein gelyk ja Woensdags, tussen dinsdag toetsies, so altyd is er mense wat toet en by keervolle lichttoetes aan ander normale toetes en Vrydag, Saterdag en Sondag is super julle, so jy krijg ons blijf net aandag so hierdie ding wat ons geval het, ons het dit afgekom hierdie is ons allemaal wat alles in regel is ek het alles gekoop die dag dis ons allemaal en het kan so daar is ek en daar is een beste goed ek wil vast van ja dit is my tweede keer sê ek absoluut my en hier is ons allemaal wat zijn ons allemaal dit is very close en hier is dan is het kan niet veel, so hier is veel voor onze afval. Daar staan ek, en daar is my vriend, en ons afval kry een lantern, ons het een 5 tot die pot, ons afval, dit ons ding in, en dit steek ons die ding in die brand. En ons steek ons het saam in die brand, en dit is 3 man, links is die ding in die en dan om saam af te brand, en dit is so brand, dit is absoluut verkeerd, dit is op een hele, dit is so gelijk. Nee, hier is wat ek allemaal saam en dan wanneer ding afgebrand en hardloop allemaal kalk uit in die windruk. Ja, dat is allemaal kalk in. So, jy sien baie kalk in. So, wanneer hulle al die goed afbrand, dan begin die mense kaal om die ding te hardloop. So, ek ding wat
Nothing, I'm just greeting you.
Niemand judge nie, niemand laat nie, niemand maak die slecht vir nie. En al die vrouwens so veilig daar, en niemand kom op van jou toe en vat nie hulle. So, jy voel nie bedrijf dat niemand iets gedoen het. So, allemaal voel vry. Jy kan sy stiefje aantrek so wil, jy kan sy kaptein aantrek so wil, jy kan kalk rond het, die hele tijd. En niemand judge nie. Jy doen wat ook al jy wil. Jy doen wat so, daar is nie hard. Ach nie, weer was nie hard op wat. So, dit is een van die mooiste plekke wat ek in die wereld is. Die sunset. Loop in die ja, loop in die sien die mooiste sunset wat in die hele wereld is. Ek wil die weer was. Hier is goed in die das dit is kennis. Ja, dit bring het sy prikkel af en beide buiten. Dis die hele story. Ons het vir 2 dae mekaar ons ding gebou, dit opgesit. Dit is vir allemaal dan party. So, die sunset wat jy sien en die mense wat jy leef, die atmosfeer daarvan, is iets wat met jou kan kategorie, en daar is ons ding dan uiteindelijk achter, daar is die groot is. Dit is absoluut iets in deel, wat ek nie kan verduidelik. Ja, dus een van de beste spelers wat van de wereld is. Dit is die hard afgaan. Ik kan hier weer wel die hard afgaan. Die zit zoals het zit, daar zoals het uit. Die tweede dat ons daar opgedaagd wordt en dan moet ik dingen opzetten. Ja. En dan kan ik dingen anders maken. Dit is wel een van de beste spelers wat ik wil spelen. Ja, dat is wat else is dan sulke groepies, hierdie in speel techno en daai in speel house en daai in speel whatever. En as jy nie dit like daar nie, dan beweeg jy aan en dan geniet jy die bietjie en dan loop jy aan. En hulle het en dit is 'n klein village geword hierdie jaar. Wat soos letterlik cool was. Dit was soos 'n mini
dit was 'n klomp mini shacks en dan was dit so toe, was lekker warm daar binne en dan het almal binne in die sit, dit was so groot soos hierdie spasie en is almal daar binne ingejam en die DJ is daar binne en my vriend vir die Missing Travis tyd gehad, hy het gesê, hy het so 3 ure weggevlout en hy het so shit in sy mind uitgestuur en sy heel en kom hy terug, die DJ het hom op 'n journey gevat en hy staan hy daar en hy flout weg in my eie brein en goed uit en kom hy terug en hy sê, shit, ek het goed uitgestuur in my eie kop, dis incredible. Dis ja, want ek dink dit is 'n spasie waar jy moet actually vry kan wees. Ja. Absoluut. Hier is die plateau. Dis wat ek het gesê, die groot afstand. Daai is waar die berg is en so ver weg. Dis so ver weg. So daai is net die isolasie wat ek gebruik het. Daai is die hart. So dis wat so jy sit hier en jy sê DJ en dan aan is daai hart verlig en dan mik jy vir daai hart en jy weet net aan die kant die hart is jou kamp. Ja, dis nou baie. Ja, nou ek wil net baie vir jou. So, dis 'n groot ding. Dis 'n groot van die groot bal. En dan sit al 10.000 mense om in die kyk daar agter. Absoluut veel. So hoe jy dit was. Maar was die al van vorm en dit wat jou totaal anders is. En nou weet ek wat om te verwag en dan is dit so anders want later het ek geen idee gehad wat om te verwag.
Megareza.
So says that's even because I can happen as a different. How do I even file?
Let me tell you something, man. You can't file now because
Oh, ne generate.
It's a mean of 54%. No, like you, it's sitting at 54%. But I'm thinking, even people from Excel.
Yeah, we need
Or normal, 2 months. Something you check no more than 3 months. Shoot.